What is the difference between Pratyahara and Dhyan, meditation? In Pratyahara, mind is trying to withdraw itself from the experiences into one unity. When you are in meditation, there are only three things that are surviving for you: the meditator, the act of meditation, and the object of meditation. This is the Trinity in meditation, and other than these three, nothing is surviving for you. There is no fourth experience, there is no fourth distraction, or there is no experience of dissipation, no knowledge or experience of time and space. There is just me and the object and process of meditation which is going on. It is certainly the dharma of indris, the senses, to see, hear, taste, smell, and so on. But the Supreme Being within you is different from this dharma. By the practice of Pratyahara, you do not withdraw your senses but separate yourself from them. It is like pouring clear water into a yellow colored jug or a green colored jug. The water appears to be yellow or green, but if you wish to know the real nature of water, you will have to pour it into a colorless jug. In the same manner, the practice of Pratyahara is not meant to control the senses, but rather to separate the self from the senses. The senses will continue their activities. Even after Jivan Mukti, the eyes will continue to see, the ears go on hearing, and the mind continues to think. Mind functions on three levels. These three levels of mind are known as conscious, subconscious, and unconscious minds. In yoga, we call them as gross mind, the astral mind, and the casual mind. Through these three levels of mind, you have objective and sensorial experiences. There is a relationship, an interlink between the mind, the object, and the senses. The mind experience an object via the senses: tasting, hearing, touching, seeing. All these experiences which you get through the senses are recognized by the mind. Now, this process of recognition of objects is to be stopped in meditation. When you are very deep in meditation, you do not hear external sounds and you do not have any experiences of the senses because the connection between the mind and object is separated. The first step I would say to meditation is to separate the mind from the senses. If you are not able to separate the mind from the senses, meditation will not take place at all. In yoga, there are techniques by which you can separate your mind from the senses. One of the very smaller but powerful technique I would say is pranayam. To achieve pratyahara, certain techniques such as meditation on nad, bindu, prana, and so on, they are very useful. Of these things, meditation on pran, the breath, is the easiest and most effective. And the goal of each of these techniques is to attain peace and power. Just like a farmer, he puts the seeds and reaps the harvest when it is ripe. So also you meditate and in course of time reap the harvest of peace and power. But always what happens is seed can yield a harvest only when the favorable conditions exist. The soil has to be fertile. There should not be undergrowth of weeds. Similarly, peace and power follow meditation practices only after the correct receptivity has been created. And such receptivity is created by what we call as pratyahara. After this, the exploration of your unconscious becomes more easier. When you go deep into your unconscious, you get rid of the samskaras, that lie embedded there. When the samskaras go, the mental tensions and agitations also depart. Then you get peace, Shanti. Once peace is attained, the stage for the manifestation of the power, the Shakti, is set through the practice of Kriya Yoga. With Shakti, you attain Gyan, knowledge. As long as you do not acquire any mental, emotional, and muscular tranquility, you cannot have favorable grounds for the manifestation of power. Power can manifest only when the dissipation of mind stops. As long as the mind is not steady, it is weak. When mental disturbances, mental turbulences, they vanish, power manifests. This power is called as Atma Shakti, and it takes various forms in its external manifestations. There are various scriptures being laid down for the realization of this power. Begins with Pratyahara practices, some asanas, pranayams, jap. You introvert your outgoing senses so that the Pratyahara sadhana, it becomes a prerequisite for acquiring power. When you hear a melodious song, you automatically, your mind sets up a relationship with the song. When you watch an absorbingly deep, interesting game or any other thing, your mind withdraws itself from the surrounding distractions and becomes one pointed, right? Similarly, by Pratyahar, you make your mind one pointed and go deep inside. Ordinarily, we are awake to the external world and sleep within. In spiritual terminology, in yogic terminology, I would call this as agyan or ignorance. When you are awake within and sleep to the outside world, it is called as gyan, it is called as knowledge. When you awake both within and without, it is samadhi. In samadhi, the line of demarcation does not exist. When this happens, the mind, it becomes very powerful and acquires creative power. What it thinks and says does take place. It becomes the doer. If we talk about the Pratyahar practice with the breath, concentration on the breath is one of the most powerful methods of introverting your restless mind. The practice of meditation is divided into four stages, I would say: Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, and Samadhi. Pratyahar is introversion, Dharana is concentration, Dhyan is meditation, Samadhi is your transcendence. Concentration on breath comes in the first category. As you concentrate on your breath, the mind automatically becomes withdrawn. When this stage has been accomplished, then you have to try to fix your mind on one chosen point. If you continue to withdraw and introvert the mind without bringing it to one point, it will be absolutely hypnotized. When you are able to introvert the mind to a certain point, and when psychic experiences suddenly begin, immediately start the practices of dharana. Introducing, I would say, pratyahar with the mantra. A mantra is a word, a vibration, which liberates the mind from samskaras, just as energy is liberated from matter. And this is the etymology of mantra. Mantra. It is purely defined in terms of mental and spiritual freedom or moksha. Every month has a specific sound. We do not know all the sounds, but we do know that there are certain sounds which are mild and others which are stronger. What happens when the sound is produced? Scientists They have been discovering and they find that the brain patterns are altered. Tantrics, they say when a sound is produced, it alters the formation of the mind. Mantra exist as energy in the form of gross and subtle sounds. Different dimensions of nad or sound have been perceived. Mantra should be used for spiritual evolution. In Nad Yoga practice, inner sounds are used as pathway to Pratyahara Dharana Dhyan Samadhi. As per the Nad Yoga, the structure of matter is comprised of millions of sounds, both familiar and unknown. Every object is a dense composition of sound particles, and the aggregation of these particles is conceived by the yogis in the form of sound or mantra. When you recite these mantras, you're actually working out the problems of your awareness and your mind. This is a very powerful practice. Let's take for an example the mantra Om. It is composed of two sounds O and M. It can be repeated in four ways audibly, in a whisper, mentally, or automatically. Finally, it becomes the part of your consciousness. And this mantra gets embedded in the general structure of your mind. And that's why the mantra should be, practiced in four stages. Aloud first, either Om or Om, allowing the sound to be registered by the brain, which in turn will alter its waves so that the peace of the mind and pratyahar occur spontaneously. After a few months, it should be chanted in a whisper, then mentally, and finally in conjunction with the breath. Pratyahar becomes successful if mantra is taken as the basis of sadhana. We talked about the breath, we talked about the mantra. There is one more thing required, which is called as psychic symbol. A psychic symbol is necessary for maintaining the awareness. By concentrating on a symbol, you can crystallize the tendencies of the mind at one point. When mind becomes deep and one is able to visualize an object as if it were real, the mind has become creative. By thought, one is able to create an object. In Pratyahara and Dharana, psychic symbols are used for the purpose of crystallizations. But in deep meditation, they are for materialization. By Pratyahara, withdraw your mind from the external objects. After having this done successfully, you pick yourself one symbol. I'm not talking about God, but I'm talking about a symbol. Mind needs a basis. Without a basis, you cannot formulate mind into a pattern. If you have no glass, where would you put the water? Mind is a fluid. It is in the form of consciousness, and this mind has got to be brought into one pattern if you want to see your mind. The symbol can be gross, medium, or subtle. A gross symbol is an object outside. This object can be anything, but it has to be a concrete object. In the systems of yoga, there are three types of symbols, three types of objects. Which one can choose for one's meditation? One is a gross object, another is a subtle object, and the third is a thought. Some people find it easy to concentrate on a thought or an idea, but For most of the people, it is very difficult or almost impossible. Therefore, for successful meditation, one has to choose a form. It is inevitable. Mind is a homogeneous awareness. This awareness is twofold, internal or external. The material awareness is an external experience of the mind. A spiritual awareness is an internal experience of the mind. When you have sensual perceptions, then you know that the awareness is external. When you dissociate the mind from the senses, the awareness becomes internal. The mind can turn either way. When your mind is extrovert, it has the experiences of form, sound, touch, taste, smell through your sense organs. The sensual experience is the game of the mind. If the mind is introverted, the senses are inert and lifeless, then one does not hear, see, smell, taste, touch. This is Pratyahara. We define awareness as external or internal, material or spiritual. The material awareness is an external experience of the mind. Spiritual awareness is an internal experience of the mind. When the mind has a barrier, it is limited to material experience. But when the barrier is broken, then it has the spiritual experience. In yogic philosophy, the barrier is known as avidya, ignorance, maya, illusion. When the mind turned inwards, whenever it turns inwards, you first approach that barrier and begin to see the cosmos, which is an infinite experience. It has no beginning, no end, no circumference, no center. By the practice of mantra, this barrier is broken. The mind works like a camera. Whatever has been known and experienced through the senses remains imprinted in your subliminal part of the mind. These impressions or formations are so numerous that you may never be able to know them all, and it is not easy to even classify them. Some are weak and insignificant, while others have a powerful, very powerful influence on your character, habits, and nature. Some are casual and periodical, while others they accompany you all the time. The formations of the mind have three ranges. In Sanskrit, we call them Vikshep, Vikalp, and Lay. Vikshep means distraction, Vikalp means one pointedness, and Lay means total dissolution. The first range occurs when the mind is continuously jumping from one point to another and is never constant. For example, you're concentrating on a flame of a candle and distracting through distracting thought processes, they come to your mind. It is Vikshep. This is one of the formations of the mind. The second formation is Vikalp. When you have established Pratyahara, disconnected your mind from the senses, one pointedness takes place. Now you begin to see the visions. You may be concentrating on the flame of a lamp, but you begin to see another television. These psychic formation of the mind are called as vikalp, and they are extremely difficult to break. In meditation, if a thought comes to your mind, you can definitely force it out of your own will. But when vikalp comes, you are helpless. These are involuntary expressions of the psychic formations, and you have no control over them. So, how are you going to destroy or fix these formations? Here, mantra is going to be very useful. Mantra is capable of completely destroying these psychic formations, which we call as vikalp. There is a third and a very powerful formation of the mind called as lay, which is dissolution, suspension. At that time, the consciousness is completely eliminated and there is a total shunya or voidness. You have been concentrating on a lamp, flame, and suddenly everything is switched off. There is no flame, there is nothing, you're totally helpless, lost. This is a very obstinate formation. And in order to avoid staying in this state, you should have a symbol. The things which we talked: breathe, mantra, symbol. Breathe will help you with the vikshape formation of your mind. The mantra will help you with the vikalp form of mind. And psychic symbol will help you with the lay formation of mind. Breathe helps you with the distraction. Mantra helps you with the one pointedness. And then your psychic symbol helps you with the third formation of mind called as dissolution.